Hello everybody, this is Bleakborn, and today I am doing a deck tech for Modern in the spirit of the new Modern Masters 3 coming out. I don't normally play Modern, and I have built this deck in paper a long time ago, but I've touched it up since the newer sets have come out, and I feel like we might have a winner here. It's probably not Tier 1. Modern's pretty stagnant. There can't be too many Tier 1s. But it's definitely probably a 2, maybe a 1.5. I'm sure it'll have good matches up. If any time your opponent slips up or makes any mistake at all, this deck will take them out. Let's dive right into it. We're running quite a bit of creatures in this deck, and I better tell you what the deck is first before I go into the creatures. The deck is Mono Black Devotion in Modern. There's many ways you can build this deck, and I felt like this is the way I'm going to build the deck, and we'll see how it goes. It's more of a zombie tribal theme with the Devotion mixed in because, well, there's some really good zombies in Mono Black, and Devotion's really good, and I probably don't need to go into all my reasonings right now, but let's get into it. So my first 1-drop, I am running a full play set of Gravecrawlers. They are a very cost-effective 1-drop in black. There's not too much that's better than a 2/1 4/1 that can come back from the graveyard if you control another zombie, which you will control more zombies. I definitely like this card, and he's one of my all-time favorites from Innistrad. But with the new Innistrad, I picked up 3 Cryptbreakers as my second 1-drop in the deck. I was initially running 4, but I feel like you want to go more quick and fast and hard with this deck, so running more than 3 is probably not the best option. You want to be faster, and you want to be able to do damage. They're more of, oh, I ran out of cards, I need to start drawing. But they're also a zombie. They can make more zombies. They can throw a Gravecrawler in the graveyard. They can throw some of the other cards I'll get into next. Speaking of which, I am running 4 Bloodghasts. Very strong 2-drop that comes back and comes back and comes back. As long as you're playing lands each turn, this guy will be hitting the board, attacking, and probably dying a lot. But you can toss him on turn 2 with Cryptbreaker, make a 2/2. Then when you play a land on turn 3, you can reanimate him with the land and then play one of my 3-drops or a couple other things that I'll get into a little bit later. My another 2-drop is I'm running 3 Relentless Deads. I was attempting to run 4, but they inherently don't do anything when they come in the battlefield. And generally you want at least 1 more mana up with them, otherwise they just seem to just die to everything in Modern. So 3 is where it's at. They are still really strong cards. They are a 2-drop. They reanimate your stuff in the late game. I cannot praise how strong these cards and how good this card is. It's sad that it's a 2/2. I'd love it if it was a 3/2 or a 3/1 or anything with 3 power, really, because it really kind of needs that bump up. But it does have Menace, so you will get around some of the smaller early game walls that they play. On to my 3-drops. I'm only running 4 3-drop creatures, and they are 4 Geralf's Messengers. The best triple black zombie in Modern. I don't think there's anything better than them. They come in, they hit your opponent for 2, they attack for 3, if they die, they hit them for 2 more, and then they can become a 4-power 3-drop. They are great. There's still some things I want to tweak in this deck, but I think they are probably going to stay 4 no matter what layout this deck takes. On to my 4-drops for creatures. I am running a full play set of Obliterators. I have seen other deck lists run 2 Obliterators, 2 Kalitas, but I really like Obliterators. They are really good. They're pretty much unblockable. No one's going to block them if they're unless they have a wall or something, and then they just hose red decks. Red decks are like, well, I can't kill it with my removal, otherwise I lose all my lands. But then again, most red decks should kill you by turn 4. If they're not doing that, they're not doing their job. On to the 5 drops, I am running 3 Grey Merchants of Asphodel. They are a 2/4 zombie. When they come into play, they are the main reason I'm doing Devotion strategy. When they come into play, you drain your opponent equal to your Devotion to black. Which in this deck could be turn 1, 1 drop turn 2, double black turn 3, triple black turn 4. You get 4 black, and then turn 5, he only has 2 black in his symbol, but he would give you a total of 12 drain on the turn he comes in, if everything goes well. That is a huge hit to your opponent's life. Like, I played against red decks where I play this, and then they're like, oh, you just gained 12 life. Those lightning bolts, lava axes, and all the other things I threw at you do not mean shit. That's why I like him as my top end of the deck. I'll jump into my creature-like stuff, and then I'll go into the rest of the stuff. So I am running 2 Lashwrithes in the deck to kind of add a little bit more resiliency to the deck, where you can turn your menacing Relentless Dead into a target or a threat. It can also be a 4/4 for 4, unless you hit one of the lands that are not a swamp, which I'm only running 2, but we'll get into that later. Putting it on your big trample obliterator is always fine, but they're not going to block the obliterator anyways, so you might as well put it on something that's going to do a little better. Originally with this deck, I had Nether Traders in here, and I'm still torn about them, because I really thought if you equip them with a Lashwrithe, they have Shadow, they cannot be blocked. You're hitting your opponent for quite a bit unblockable damage with the Lashwrithe equipped. So that is something to keep in mind down the line if you want to like change up the deck, or if you want to like look for alternatives. There's so much in Modern. It's hard to narrow down the perfect build in a deck like this. It all varies on your meta. And I mean, you can play it at the GP level, but I wouldn't think you would go to it, especially with the GPs lacking Modern and stuff. And a lot of the big pro tours, Modern scene is not as big as it used to be when it first came out. But if they had it at the local level, this deck could dominate. Especially without Splinter Twin, you don't have to really worry about the, hey, I win on turn 4 deck. This deck kind of will get there. It probably loses out to Tron relatively, but then again you have your sideboard. But let's get into the rest of the deck, the spells. I will start with my 1-drops for the rest of the spells. I am running 2 Inquisitions of Kozilek and 2 Thoughtseizes. They are essentially the same spell, but I wanted to put 2 of each and then run a couple more in the sideboard, or Duresses in the sideboard if you want to keep it more budget. But the reason I don't want to run a full play set of Thoughtseize or Inquisition is you want to have that flexibility, and you want to make sure that they can't like rip it from your hand and then rip all of the copies of the same one. It keeps it low enough. They do practically the same thing. They're going to hit the same stuff you want to. And since you're running mono black, you can't deal with artifacts very well, and you cannot deal with enchantments very well. So this is I'm going to get it out of their hand right away and not worry about a card. And then I am running 3 Victim of Night. The removal package could be different, I'll be honest. There's so many good black removal spells, especially with the new one getting printed. But I feel like you're not going to really be worrying to remove their creatures with that spell, because you already have Inquisition that'll hit the same stuff as that spell will. What is it called? Fatal Push. But you could run a removal suite where you run maybe 1 push, 1 victim, and the what is it called? -5 that you have to pay 4 life for it. And then you can cast it for 1. I forgot what it's called, but that's an option. You can just run Grasp of Darkness. That's still an all-star. In most scenarios, you will kill everything. But I think Victim of the Night is probably the better one. You can kill a lot of things. You could also run Go for the Throat if you want. If your meta has a lot of spell skates, because they cannot redirect it to themselves, because they are not a valid target, thus they cannot redirect it to themselves. That's something to keep in mind. I was running them originally, but I feel like Victim of the Night hits a lot of things. There's a lot of artifacts that will clog the board, and you'd rather not be able to kill a vampire, a zombie, or a werewolf. There's not very many good werewolves. There's one werewolf played in Modern. There's one or two vampires, and then there's a couple zombies, but your deck should be quicker. Onto my 3 drops, I am running 3 Liliana the Veils, mostly because I have her, and I got her back when she was in Standard, so her price is dropping with the new Modern Masters, so she is probably able to pick up relatively easy, but you can obviously swap her out for the newer Liliana that came out, or even the creature Liliana still would work out pretty well in this deck. But that is ultimately up to your meta. I find that since I have her and she's relatively, hey, 3 mana removal spell that stays on the board, can absorb damage, or can start discarding Bloodghasts, Gravecrawlers, or other things you can want to bring back with Relentless Dead. She is an all-star in Modern, and everyone knows that. So I wouldn't say you need the player, but I wouldn't want to see you not play her. But you could easily swap her for the newer Liliana, and she probably would actually work a little better for you in the overall scheme of things. I probably could run 2 of her and 1 of the new one. But that's beside the point. This deck is more of a speculatory build. You can build it. You can build something similar. Magic is about having fun. It's not always about winning. But this deck should net you a bunch of wins out of nowhere. And the reason I've included the Cryptbreakers is because the games I lost is because I didn't have enough cards. And they're a 1-mana guy that will get you more cards. But on to the lands. I am running 21 Swamps and 2 Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. And honestly, you could probably just run 23 Swamps and be okay. I wouldn't run fetch lands. You don't want to have to pay that life. You don't have much way to get it back. You're already paying up to 4 life with Thoughtseize. So keeping your life total relatively high allows you to stay in the game longer. This is to max out the effect of the drain off the Grey Merchant for this deck, and less of the streamlining the deck. I don't think you should spend that much on a mana base, especially when you're running 1 color deck. But if you wanted to, you could run 4 Blood Crypts and then 4 of the fetch lands to Bloodstained Mire if you wanted to have red stuff in the sideboard. I'm not going to go into the sideboard in this video because it's all dependent on your meta, but you could run Surgical Extraction, more removal, more Inquisitions, more Lilianas. There's plenty of stuff in the sideboard range that you guys can figure out on your meta. You don't need me to tell you what your meta is. But that's pretty much the overall deck. There's lots of improvements or tweaks you could make depending on your own playstyle. This is what I like. For the deck build, you can always build it your own way. But if you like this video, if you like seeing deck techs, if you enjoy my content at all, please leave a like and leave a comment if you have a similar deck idea or similar cards or things you'd want to tweak. I do like hearing that stuff, so don't think I don't. Magic is always an evolving, changing world. Every time a set comes out, something could change. But this is Bleakborn signing out. Thanks for watching my video. Like and subscribe.